So we're not going to actually work on React.js until we get to week 3, right? So instead we're going to break our React.js application, kind of telling you, hey, we don't really want to use the React part of this just yet, right? Because we're going to be first learning baby steps, first HTML, then Java, then CSS, and finally, when we get to JavaScript, then we'll come back to React, right? But we need a place to host our web application for now, right? So I'm going to break this a little bit so that it's not going to be a React application. It's just a plain old HTML file, right? So let's do that. Let's do that a little bit. So let me move this over to the right-hand side, right? And I'm going to open up this project, right, in our our favorite IDE, right? Integrated development environment. So I'm going to use going to use VS Code, but you're welcome to use your favorite ones. So I'm going to use VS Code, and I'm going to close this. I'm just going to open. So I'm going to open this one we just created, and there it is. Okay. So we're here in the same directory that we were just in a minute ago. So I'm going to put this side by side, and we can start looking at the content here, right? So everything starts right here under the public directory. So public is also a very common name for a folder that servers use, right, to host content, right? And the name public means that anything you put in that directory will be made publicly available by the server, right? When the server runs, any file, image, audio, or any content that you put in there, the server, you're saying that is okay for the server to share with the rest of the world, right? And the way the server works is that you go out to the IP address of where the server is running, right? And when it's running locally on our machine, there's an alias to the IP address of the local machine, which is localhost. Localhost is an alias to the local IP address, which is 127.0.0.1, right? That's a standard IP address that is mapped to your local machine, right? So if I go there, notice that it's the same, it's the same server running at that IP address, and it's listening at a particular port, right? So machines, they have a network card, right? And they can connect to the internet using the TCP/IP protocol, and all machines have a unique IP address, which allows me to, it's like a phone number, right? If I know the IP address of another machine, I can type the IP address of that machine and then establish a communication with that particular machine, right? Also, at that particular IP address, there are thousands of ports that different software can listen in at that IP address, but in different ports. Okay, so it divides that IP address into multiple ports, right? That many of those ports have specific roles, right? For like email, FTP, SSH, right? All those have very well established port numbers that they listen at, right? 22 or 27. I forget what they are. One of them is for FTP, the other one is for email, and one is for SSH. I forget what the numbers are, but they're very well established port numbers at a particular IP address. But beyond higher level port numbers like 1024 and above, you can use those port numbers for whatever you want, right? So this one in particular, we're using port 3000. That's a very, very popular port number for Node.js developers to use. It's a very, very common in the Node.js community to use 3000 as a Node.js server, right? Which is hosting our React application, right? I think Angular, I think it's like 42,000 or something. And so they're very well-defined IP addresses. Like, for instance, Java developers like to use 8,000 or 8080 or 8008. Those are very, very, very common port numbers that different developer community use, right, for their development. So yeah, so we're going to be using 3000 for our users, but really it could have been anything. We could have chosen whatever we want, but 3000 is very, very popular. Anyway, so then here you have, presumably we have a slash there, right, where you can then navigate to different parts of the folder that is being shared. So that slash there, right there, right, it's referred to as the root of the web application, and it's mapped physically. It's mapped to the location of this public directory, right? So if I dump in here a file here that says hello .text, right, and I say hello world, and I save that, I can reference it from here. I can say, well, I want that file hello .text, right? And the server will receive that request and will physically go in that folder and look for a file called hello.txt. It finds it, says, I found it, and then it just sends it back to me, literally whatever the content of that file is. Make sense? So yeah, that's what servers are, and that's what the public directories do, right? Whatever you put in there is freely available. Anything you don't put in the public directory is not available anywhere. Okay, hence public and not public. So anyway, in particular, there is a particular file in there called index.html, right? And so this file has a special meaning. Right, it has a very, very specific name called index.html. It has a specific role, right? And the role is that it's meant to be as the index of a book, right? Just like you have the index of a book at the end, right? We all know what an index is. We know what the table of content is, right? So the index is meant to be a very quick way of finding things in the book, right? It might say that, oh, you can find this whatever on page 324, right? So the index is meant to play that role, right? It's meant for you to be able to navigate to other portions of your website, right? Of your web content. And so it's a very standard name. Notice that here, just like I literally asked for hello.txt, right? I had to type it in there, but if I don't ask for anything, notice what happens. It renders this other thing, right? So it's, wait a minute, I didn't ask for index.html. Actually, I did, right? If I can either ask for it literally or implied, right? So I can literally say index.html, right? And I see that content, right? So actually, that's what I see. If I don't ask for anything, what the server does is that if I don't ask for anything, it will by default send me the index file. Okay, so if I don't ask for anything, that's what it's sending me, the content of the index file. And so what does the index file have? Well, the index file doesn't have quite a lot. It has almost nothing in it. It has HTML. We can see that, right? It has HTML, and very much the same structure of what we were looking earlier when we were looking at Canvas. Yes, it has a dot type at the top. It says telling the browser, how to interpret this file. It has HTML. It has an HTML. It has a head, right, and it has a body, right? All HTML documents follow this structure, right? It has the HTML tag, right, the head tag, and then the body tag. And the head tag is just lots of references to things that I need for this to work, right? It has references to an image file, it has references to some data here, right? But nothing that I might use for rendering actually content, right? The content is really in the body. So if we open that up, we have not much in here, right? We have this no script. This is just a warning saying that if you don't have JavaScript turned on, this won't work, right? Which we do. We have JavaScript turned on, so we don't use this warning. And then we have this comment. This is an HTML comment saying that it's not going to render. It's mostly just comment explaining stuff. So it's not rendering anything. And then we just have this div that says ID root, right? So you might ask, scratch your head and say, wait a minute, where's this spinning image, right? This content here, this learn, I don't see that, right? Actually, if I blow that away, right, and I save that, notice that the screen goes blank, right? It has nothing to render. And I can just start typing whatever here, right? Which will be rendered in the content here, right? So you might scratch your head, well, where did that content come from, right? And that's magic that we're going to cover in the 3rd week. We're going to start looking at that magic. But just so I don't leave you hanging, let me put back that root and where does this content come from? Only as a peek of what's coming up on week 3 and so on, right? Very, very quick peek on that. Where the magic happens is actually outside of the public directory. It's in here, the source, right? So first of all, let's look at this div here, and it says root. See that? See that? So we are pumping content dynamically into the root, right? And so for instance, if here's this image, we can still inspect it and see that it has what? Let's see, we have this ID root, which is this one right here, right? But then inside of that root, we have this additional root div that says class app. That's not there. Where is that? I don't see it, right? And inside that app, this div, we have a header, right? And then we have there's the image, it's spinning, right? We have this paragraph down here, and then we have a hyperlink there, none of which is here, right? And so where is that magic happening? So that magic is happening over here. Under the source directory, there is a index.js, right? There's an index.js that says, go fetch me that element that has the ID of root, right? There it is, right? See that? Go fetch me that element whose ID is root, okay? And get a reference to it, and then render this content in there. So inject this content into that div, right? Dynamically render there. And we know how to do that, and we will learn how to do that. We're going to be learning how to use JavaScript to programmatically grab content from the DOM element and then just append more content dynamically, right? And that's what React is all about, right? What is it rendering? It's rendering this funny little thing here, app. If we go into app, we'll notice that there's the div, right? With class name app. See that? There it is. There's my div with class app, right? We have the header. There it is, this header. See that? The image, that image, this paragraph is right there. See that? Here's my paragraph. Okay. And the hyperlink, there's the hyperlink, right? And then it says learn React. Yeah. We might add our own content in here. We might say, I want a big heading that says, welcome to web dev. Right, and save that, and there's our header. See that? We see the content immediately rendered and inserted in there. Okay, so that's what we're going to be learning later on, starting on week 3. JavaScript and all this, how we inject content dynamically, and we're going to be learning about using data structures, arrays and objects, and to iterate over content, right? And how to manipulate that data structure and to dynamically render that content on the page, right? But that's later on, week 3. Yeah, for now, I'm going to break this, right? We're going to abandon React.js for now, right? And we're going to just focus and learn baby steps, learning about HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and making things look pretty. Okay. All right, so let's break this. So the way we're going to break this is we're basically not going to import CSS, right? So no look and feel, and we're not going to do this render, right? We're going to leave that. So we broke it. It broke it. It's not rendering anything. So instead, we're going to come here in the index document. We're going to comment out this div for now, right? And we're going to start just learning about HTML here, right? So we're gonna learn that we can use headings, right, to break up our content into sections, right? So we'll say H1, we'll say welcome to web dev, right? Save that, right? And now we're rendering ugly HTML with no styling, because we're going to learn how to style it, right? So we'll start off from the bare bones, nothing, right?